Okay, so it's been mentioned that some videos on UK cosplay masquerades and competitions and stuff might be helpful. I'm going to try and fit it into 10 minutes, but it might be a two-parter, we'll see. The video in the back was taken about 8 to 10 years ago with my first attempt at Agatha, and before I added and improved it and then sold it. So anyway, cosplay competitions, masquerades and so on. Usually a masquerade has a competition to it. There may be different categories. For example, you might have under 16s, you might have performance or shop bought. Those two usually go hand in hand. And you often have a craftsmanship aspect to it. If you are entering the smaller competitions, not all of them have the capacity to allow you to do skits, which is where you do like a little acting thing for it. So we'll start with that. So if you're entering that kind of competition, generally it's like a pose thing. You can usually do something, like you can do something in character, but most people will do 3 poses and then off they go. When you do the poses, I usually start stage right, stage left, center stage, and then I go. For each pose, I strongly recommend that you count to 10 in your head when you do the pose, and you hold it for that count of 10, mainly because most people say 5, but I know I count really fast. So if you count to 10, you know that you've posed enough, and for long enough for photographers in the audience to get a good shot that isn't blurry. Now, if you enter a competition and it can allow skits, try not to make your skit longer than 1.5 to 2.5 minutes long. Some competitions will specifically say how long your skit can be, but some don't think about that, especially some of the smaller ones. But if your skit is really long, then that can cause problems with how long the competition as a whole is, and it just causes headaches for the organisers. So do try to keep your skits relatively short. Now, anything higher competition wise will usually have a pre-judging section. That's where you'll be given a time and a place to go in costume to stand in front of the judges and talk about how you put your cosplay together. You usually get 2.5 minutes for this per person. It will be timed. You won't be allowed to go over. I really suggest that you practice this. I always forget, unless it's one of my more worn cosplays. So cosplays I've worn quite a bit and competed in quite a bit. But you need to think about sort of the cosplays that you, or the parts of your cosplay that you are most proud of. Make sure you talk about anything really difficult to make, how you made it, whether you made any errors and had to do it again, and try to streamline everything. Try not to talk too much, which I myself am really bad at. Do excuse my voice, I have got someone's leggy and I do sound very manly at the... Once you've done your pre-judging, the competition is separate to this. It usually won't run directly after, depending on how many people are in the competition. There will usually be a break for the judges in between the pre-judging and the competition itself. Now, when there's a pre-judging, there usually is a requirement to do a skit. Some won't. Some will allow you to do the posing, but a lot of the higher up competitions will have a performance element added to the craftsmanship element as well. So the judges will be looking at how well your cosplay is made, but also how well you perform on stage as your character. Now, normally you will not be allowed to have a mic. It's very rare that you get to do any microphone work in higher up competitions. So what most people do, if you want to do some singing or you want to say dialogue that isn't specifically from whatever you're cosplaying from. Maybe you're cosplaying from a book. Then you will usually pre-record this, and you'll have a deadline often before the con actually starts in order to provide any background music and or dialogue or singing for the purposes of the convention. Make sure that you do not miss that, and that you get that to them as soon as possible. When you're preparing your skits, think about your character. You can do something specifically from whatever you're cosplaying from, maybe a scene from an anime. You might want to make props or what have you, or you can do something completely out of character. For example, you might have a really serious character and you might want to do something comedic to make people laugh. Essentially, you can do whatever you want so long as it is appropriate for public viewing. Unless you're at an 18+ con, generally keep it nice and, you know, child friendly, and so on, because obviously there may be kids in the audience. So, for example, if you're a Has-Been Hotel cosplayer, try to keep the swearing down to a minimum if you can. Especially if you're sending the stuff before, you may get an email saying we can't use this, and they'll send it back. So if you had any editing programs and you want to use music with swear words in, you may want to just edit a beep over it or something. And you can even work that kind of thing into your skit. Now, I know performance isn't everybody's thing. I love performing. I physically can't perform as well as I used to, which is depressing, because I actually really like it. I grew up on stage, but some people get stage fright. So I do have a couple of tips for people who do suffer from stage fright but still want to compete. And that is, when you're doing your performance, perform to the back of the audience. This is not screen performing, you are stage performing. I've seen this trend, particularly on YouTube, where people are taking the mick out of TikTok performing and comparing it to camera performance. And I don't like it, because basically TikTok acting is stage acting. And I will usually say, you know, have you ever watched something on stage? Because if you're up close, you will see that it is very in your face. But enough of that. Another tip is, do not picture people naked. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. What I do is I will play to the audience, but the key is not to look anyone in the eye. Now, to make people think that you are playing to them, so you might want to sort of look towards one part of the audience and then another part of the audience, I will pick a head and I will look just above their foreheads. That way, because you're on stage and you're slightly removed from them, they won't realise that you're not actually physically looking in their eyes and you're not physically looking at them. You are looking just above, because as soon as you make actual physical eye contact, that's when the nerves will hit. Even for me, who's been performing since I was like 2-3 years old. I'm sure there's some more that I can think about, but my head is full of cold and my throat is really sore right now. But once you've done your performance, you just have to wait for all the other people to do their performance. There may be a little bit of a break, maybe a half-hour break in between the competition itself and the announcement of the winners. Some people will have, or some conventions will have something going on during that half an hour, and others will just let you have a little chit chat, and some will even have like a walk-on thing for people that don't want to perform. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.